Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
Ralph Waldo Emerson had a famous quote that says, "It's not the destination, it's the journey." My next guest has so many interests and keeps herself so busy that she has no time for boredom. Thus, she is the embodiment of that journey. She's a cosmetic tattoo artist, an MMA enthusiast, a paranormal enthusiast, and you can hear her every week on the weekly podcast, What's Up, Weirdo? Not gonna lie, it has one of the coolest formats I've ever heard of a podcast. I'd like to welcome Jessica Knapik to the show. We talk about our love of MMA, we talk a little bit about otherworldly things, and name drop a few friends we have in common. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Ladies and gentlemen, I just learned a minute ago that my next guest on the podcast, Jessica Knapik, had her name mentioned on Ariel Helwani's show today. What the hell? Tell us about this.
I did. I have watched Ariel's show I don't think I've missed a minute of it for 5 years, 6, I don't know, a lot. I literally schedule my work. Oh, this is embarrassing. I schedule my work days on the Tuesdays and Thursdays so I don't miss Ariel. That's so embarrassing. But yeah, I made a bet on, I've been dabbling in the sports betting since it got legalized in Michigan. So I made a bet Saturday night that there would be 4 subs on the main card, which is ridiculous to even think about. The odds were plus 8,000. And I only put down $5, but I won $400 from my $5. So they do on Ariel every Monday, like features on the biggest wins and the biggest like WTF, and I tagged Connor in my tweet and he was like, "That's so sick, blah, blah, blah." So they put my bet on the screen today and said, and like had my Twitter handle and stuff. And Connor said my name and I was like, "Oh my God, he said my name right."
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's funny you mentioned that because I started dabbling with the DraftKings app myself and then oh my gosh. So I pulled it up the day of the Amanda Nunes Pena fight, right? Mm-hmm. And I saw the lines on that were huge. So just putting in dollar amounts, I'm like, okay, I'm only going to spend, if I do this, I'm only going to spend about $200. Mm-hmm. And I was betting mostly on underdogs. I would have turned that into $5,000 if I would have pulled the trigger on the fucking bet. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I know it's a slippery slope. You know what I'm saying? As fight fans, like you go through it every Saturday night. You start speculating and you're like looking at the card. You're looking at the odds and you're like, okay, if I bet $5 here and $10 here, it adds up quick, but it could pay off quick too.
Well, that was the thing. This one on Saturday, I put down 5. If I would have put down 200, I would have won $16,000.
Right.
So I've been trying not to think about that too much today. But also this past Saturday too, I threw 5 on Mike Jackson because it was like a joke, and I won $36. So thank you, Mike Jackson. And that came down to be so fluky too. And I know he won a lot of people a lot of money, but it's stuff like that, like after Adam Berry from Kindred Spirits. He saw my bet tweet and he sent me a video today and he's like, "Do I need to like back you?" He's like, "If I give you $1,000, will you like," and I'm like, "You don't want to do it." I'm like, "You don't want to do this." I'm like, this isn't like, are the Tigers going to win tomorrow and you have 50-50 chance? This is like, I just bet a bunch of money and somebody's arm fucking snapped. Like, right. We have it's so many things can happen.
Exactly. That's been my hesitation too, because the sport of MMA is so unpredictable that you basically don't want to lose your ass. And it would have been off the parlay that I would have won the money. I probably should have clarified that. It wasn't just the straight bet itself. It would have been on the parlay of the underdogs that I would have won the big money. That's crazy stuff. This is a great intro. So why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are?
I don't even know where to start. I feel like I do so many things. Okay, so I'm a cosmetic tattooer. I tattoo eyebrows and freckles on people's faces. I invented a viral beauty trend called Astrofrex, which allows the person to hide their zodiac constellation on their face within tattooed freckles. It went viral in 2017. Like, I posted it on Instagram, and when I woke up the next morning, I had messages from Cosmo Australia. And I'm like, are you joking? Like, what just happened? So that blew up. It was in Vogue. It was in Elle. It was in Allure. It was on MTV, AOL. It went crazy. I don't even know what happened. So that's like how my name got blown up in the cosmetic tattoo world. So I do that. I have my own studio. That's my normal job. But then I do paranormal events. So I travel around I've spoke at a couple, we'll lead like investigations of haunted places. I have a podcast called What's Up Weirdo, where we talk about all things weird and some normal stuff. We'll just talk about like that we went to the dollar store, but then we'll also talk about Bigfoots and aliens and fairies and curses in the same episode. It just goes off the rails. And then I write for an MMA website. I write for the Co-Main Event. It's a podcast, and then they also have a website. And people who have been on Twitter might have seen my articles. And it started as a joke, but I do fight breakdowns according to which crystals fighters could use to help them in the fight. So I do I call it the 30% serious fight breakdown you've always needed. Because I'm not really. But the thing is, a lot, and you probably know this about athletes too, is they do use good luck charms, and they do have
yes.
What's suspicions? That's not real. Superstitions. Like, I've had real fighters DM me and ask what crystals they should use, like UFC fighters. So it's like, it's funny, but it's still fun. Like, if you want to believe it, then go ahead. If you think it's going to help you, then great. So.
Right.
So yeah, I write for them. I feel like I'm missing like 3 other things that I do. I just never, it's a wonder that I sleep. It's a wonder that my hair isn't gray. I never quit.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I want to thank my friend Brian Corey and your friend Brian Corey for making the introduction, because, both of us being podcasters, both of us being MMA junkies, and also into the paranormal and having some interests and things that might be otherworldly. He's like, man, he goes, you guys could have a really great conversation. And he said, you're sharp as a whip. So Brian has had really good things to say about you.
Thanks, Brian.
So let's talk about your podcast, What's Up Weirdo. What was kind of the antithesis of starting that show? And, let's get into the minutia of what it's about. Yeah,
so my dog is starting to try and get my attention. So if he barks, I apologize. People
no
who
worries.
What's Up Weirdo are super familiar with all of this. They hear him bark like every episode and squeak his toys. But yeah, so it started from the pandemic, really. Me and my best friend, John Tenney, who is a professional paranormal investigator and lecturer, ufologist, all things weird. He used to write for Unsolved Mysteries, the original Unsolved Mysteries. He was a researcher. So we are BFF. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, it seems like a distant memory now. It seems like we've all pushed it out of our heads. But at the beginning of the pandemic, it was kind of scary. It was like, you weren't leaving your house. You weren't working because you couldn't. And then it's like your friend is like over there and you're like, we would just get on the phone and be like, hi, friend. Like, are you still alive? And at the time, I had my dog of 14 years passed last year, and I went through that on the podcast. And I think that's what endeared me to a lot of people, because I did not hold anything back and I did not edit anything, and it was rough. So I was going through his kind of last phase. And then also Tenny's mom was passing away. She had advancing Alzheimer's. So not only were we dealing with this pandemic, but we were both like dealing with being caretakers and like kind of going crazy and like leaning on each other, right? So, and then we both kind of wouldn't talk to anybody all day. And then by the time you got on the phone, we would just be like, blah, 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 blah. And you were like stir crazy. So we'd be just like cackling the whole time. We're like, why are these phone calls so fucking funny? And then it it turned into that. I'm like, I think people should hear this. Or maybe nobody will care, but we didn't care. It was like our own therapy. And then we just started doing it. And strangely enough, like people like love it. And we get so many comments about like, I've been locked in my house for 2 years. This is exactly what I needed. I just feel like I'm sitting in a room with my weird friends. And it's just nice to have conversation in the background. And I answer you guys out loud. I act like I'm there. And it's like, that's what we want. It's like literally translated how we wanted it to, like for people to just feel like they're friends, hear about weird stuff, laugh out loud, and not feel alone. And it like worked out perfect.
Podcasting kind of became the fire pit, sitting around the fire pit for people during the pandemic. And it also became its own form of therapy. I've shared this on my show multiple times, but you know, I played music and I played in bands for 15 years. And then I quit a decade ago and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going stir crazy because I have nothing to do, because it was the heat of the pandemic when I started mine as well. And like, I needed a creative outlet also. So it's like, what else am I going to do? Oh, I made all these great connections over the years playing in bands. So let's just start a fucking podcast. Right. And
yeah.
So that's a common thread when I have a lot of podcasters on, that especially most of them having started the podcast in the heat of pandemic, you know, same thing, same exact thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then Tenny too, which I didn't even notice, but he made the point too, kind of early on, that people were losing their jobs. People were canceling Netflix, canceling Hulu. Like, I don't have the money for this. I don't have a job, but podcasts are free. So it was kind of like this thing that people had that just like worked out.
Yeah. And it just kept people connected to the real world out there.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So in the midst of having your podcast, your first episode was in March of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
How has your life been impacted by doing this podcast? Now, you do it weekly, right?
We do. We have not missed a week since we started, which is crazy. There were 2 weeks where I didn't do it. The one time was literally the week I lost my dog. I couldn't speak. I don't even know how I did the one after that, quite frankly, but obviously I needed to talk about it anyway. So that was the 1 week I missed, and he had Adam Berry on, and it was perfect. So we've only ever had 2 guests. And then the other week I missed was International Fight Week last year. I was in Vegas and I'm like, Tenny, I'm too busy. I'm having fun. I'm not doing this. So, I'm like, I'm by the pool. So he had our friend Josh Mallerman on, who wrote Bird Box, which turned into the Netflix sensation Bird Box. He wrote the book. He writes other horror movies. He has other books. He wrote Mallory, which is a follow-up to Bird Box. Anyway, he's like a genius, and he plays in bands too, and he's like literally one of us. So he did the other episode with him, and it was great. So I do think we'll probably have a couple more fill-ins here and there. I know Tenny has to go to Europe in July, and I'm going to International Fight Week again this year. So I don't know how we're going to do this, but figure it out. We might have to record in ahead of time. I don't know.
My biggest struggle as a podcaster, and this is where I got to hand it up to you guys. I will have this run where I have all these fantastic guests, and then I'll have a glut where I'm like, I could do a solo episode, or do I revisit an old guest? So my consistency has been about bi-weekly. So, so have you made any new connections as a byproduct of doing this?
Good question. I mean, well, no, I have actually. My secret friend, who I can't talk about, but the way, this is a perfect segue, the way that I met Dana and did all that fun shit was because of this secret person who was literally just a UFO person who listened to our podcast. And this is what happened. When my dog passed away, I recorded those episodes, and I was very open on the podcast about being suicidal. I'm like, I don't even know what to do now. This thing's been my best friend for 14 years. My house is empty. I was spiraling, dude. So this person reached out to me, and they're like, I don't know if this is weird, but like, I follow you and I feel really bad for you, and I want to do something nice. And I noticed you love the UFC, because like I had posted about it a million times, but they were like, can I send you a few things? And I'm like, yeah. But they didn't. And I thought it was fake. I sent it to Tenny, and I'm like, this is fucking weird, right? I'm like, is this weird? So then I let them send me, a couple they sent me like a beach towel, I think, and some other stuff from UFC. And then we slowly started talking more, and they become one of my really good friends, but they're like my fairy godmother of the UFC that I can't talk about. So... But I do know a few fighters myself, and some of the cool things that I've been able to do is because I know some fighters. And I buy really expensive fucking tickets. Like, yes, I've gone to a couple events for free, but the ones that I haven't, like when I went to this last one that I went to at Madison Square Garden, what was it? Colby and Usman, I think.
Yeah.
My ticket was like, I'm not even kidding. My one ticket was $1,300. So I'm not a casual. I will spend the money. If I'm going to go, I want to be on the floor. I want fighters to walk past me. I want to get pics with people. And that's what happened. Our tickets were so good. That was in Vegas. That was in Vegas? Meeting Nate.
Oh, okay.
Vegas.
Gotcha.
Yes. And we bought really expensive tickets for that too. And yeah, he was only like 4 or 5 rows in front of us. So between fights, we just went for it. We just ran for it.
And the thing she's talking about for my listeners is following her on social media. She's got pictures of her and Dana White, her and Nate Diaz. I saw a picture of you and Henry Cavill also.
Oh, yeah.
So you've kind of had, I use this analogy with absolutely everybody, but you've kind of had this little Forrest Gump life where you're brushing shoulders with celebrity, even if accidentally, from time to time, right?
Oh yeah, all the time. Me and Tenny have this conversation too, where we'll bring somebody up, or we'll like go to a thing and meet whoever, and then we'll talk to people about it, and they're like, "I've never met anybody famous in my entire life," and I'm like,
right.
What? I've met so many famous people I couldn't even list it all. Like the Henry Cavill thing was when I was bartending. He was filming Superman in town, and he would come into our bar all the time, and he was so nice. And would take pictures with whoever. He was the best. And Amy Adams came in too during that. I met Josh Hartnett when I worked there. And this is like, it's not like I worked in Hollywood. I worked in frickin' Michigan. Like there's no reason. So these famous people would just walk in, and I'm just always in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, it makes you realize how small the world really is sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And like, it's good that I've met so many people too, because you just have to act like they're normal. Like, especially with the fighters, like people probably say some weird shit to them. You just have to, it's just a person. Like, right. Yes, I will get the picture or I will get the whatever, and then I'll run away and scream or freak out or get in my car and freak out. But it's like in that moment, you have to keep it together, dude. Like, keep it together.
Yeah.
Don't be weirdo. I mean, be a weird, you know what I'm saying?
I'll make this contrast here. You know, coming from the music world, I've met a lot of rock stars. I don't need to name drop names. I've been friends with a lot of people that have gone on to big successful things. Mm-hmm. As a byproduct of this podcast, I've also done the same with MMA folks mm-hmm. and people involved in that industry. I will say that fighters have a sense of humility that musicians and actors do not have that grounds them. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they get out their animosity, they get their ego out in the octagon. They don't need to walk around with a chip on their shoulder until they're in that octagon. That's when the chip on their shoulder appears, and then they get rid of it after the 3 to 5 rounds, however.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have told other people, I'm like, you know, people who are friends of baseball or football or whatever, I'm like, you don't understand. I'm like, when I go to these events, they're everywhere. It's not like there's a separation. Like, you'll be in the hotel bar and fucking 5 other fighters are eating right around you. And like, you're like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. Oh my God, that's so-and-so. Like, they don't block themselves off. They don't, right. Like you said, act too special. They don't walk around with bodyguards because they don't fucking have to. It's great. And they're so nice. They're seriously so nice. I've met so many of the fighters. I haven't had a single bad interaction with anybody that I can think of. Yeah, I've met like Izzy. I've met Chael. I've met Dan Hardy. All nice. Chael, I geeked out over Chael, dude.
I would too.
I swear I usually keep it together, and I was with another fighter at the time, so I didn't want to be like embarrass them. And I didn't ask for a picture, and I should have asked for a picture, but I was just like, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I watch Ariel and the Bad Guy every week, and I never miss it. I listen to Ariel and the Bad Guy when I'm driving, and he's like, I don't think anybody's ever said that to me before.
That's awesome.
I know, it was so cute.
That is amazing. Do you find whenever you're kind of hanging out with your circle of friends that might not be into the fighting world that you're having to explain your MMA fandom to those friends?
It's so cute that they're like happy for me. And even just my enthusiasm, they're like, I don't even care about fights and you make me care about it.
Right.
And even on the pod, I'll talk about certain stuff. And, you know, Tenny's gotten to learn stuff now just from me talking about it or me tweeting about it or whatever. I don't know. like when somebody's excited about something, you get excited for them. I can't help it. And it just kind of happened.
That sounds like you're keeping the right social circle then, because I mean, I come from a bunch of jaded ex-musicians. So it's like, I start talking about fights and they're like, oh, you mean human cockfighting? And I'm like, dude, MMA now versus the way it was 25 years ago, it's a totally different sport. And I've said this a million times on the podcast too. It has evolved in the past 5 to 6 years in particular, and it's changing and it's changing. I would put it on par with how the NFL has evolved or how the NBA has evolved. And so I feel like I'm constantly defending it from that point of view sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and the same with hockey. It's like they cut out fights. Like it's not as barbaric as it used to be. Like I remember watching like those videos of my dad and my brother when I was younger, and they like quite regularly in the UFC tapes, they would just snap each other's arms. Like like not even give a fuck. Now, if you did that on purpose, you'd look like a monster.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, it does happen, but not like, I'm not even going to like ease up before I break your arm. I'm just going to break it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So moving on to another wheelhouse, let's talk a little bit about the paranormal and things otherworldly. You said one of your friends is into the UFO phenomenon. Where is your belief system with all of that? Like anything that would be considered to normie people, if you will, fantasy or science fiction or works of fiction can be very real to some of us. So where are your interests? Where are your belief systems?
I do believe in ghosts. I do kind of believe in aliens. I do kind of believe in Bigfoots. Because why not? Like,
right.
It's more fun to believe than it is to just say it's not. Like, I don't know. Have you seen every square inch of the world? I don't know.
Oh my gosh. You just stole my line. For real. For real. When I talk about UFO phenomenon to people, I'm like, okay, show me a picture of the entire universe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Shut the fuck up.
Well, then aside from that argument, there's also like alternate timelines and past and present and whatever going on. So a lot of people think that Bigfoot is a being either from another timeline or from the past, and it just kind of blips in and blips out. And that's why we don't find the body, because it either doesn't live here or it did before and now it doesn't, like a ghost. And then another weird thing is that some people believe, and I kind of do too, that ghosts aren't other people. A lot of times your interaction with a ghost or you're hearing a sound or you're seeing something is you in the future or the past or you in another timeline.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we have another mutual friend, I think. You know Johnny Hauser at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Johnny was like, he did the second episode of my podcast. Mm-hmm. I've known Johnny for close to 20 years. And we kind of had this same exact discussion, and he made some of the very same points. Now, there were some parts that I wish we would have caught on the recording, because we actually recorded it in the Velisca house. We recorded the episode in the most haunted, the children's bedroom. And it's the only episode, and I've never said this on the podcast, but I'm saying it right now. The only episode where I had to edit almost every line for line, because the audio was fading in and out when I got back to my house and I was listening back. Only episode I've had to do that with. So take that for what it is. But Johnny and I talked a lot offline about how ghosts might be like interdimensional beings or people from other timelines, very similar to what you mentioned with Bigfoot. There was one thing I read today, kind of following the same mindset. Did you hear about the mummy they just recently found wearing Adidas shoes? 15,000 years old, but they're wearing Adidas shoes, and somebody believes that it's a time traveler. And so they haven't identified the shoes for sure yet, but the pictures are pretty damn compelling. So when we get done recording, Google search that shit.
I will. I mean, quite honestly, from what we've been talking about and from what I know and what I've seen, I wouldn't doubt it. Like, that would be like proof of alternate timelines or time travel. That's insane.
Yeah.
And yes, I have been to Velisca House. I have met with Johnny there. That house is fucked. I do believe that happened. For me, the worst feeling room was the attic.
Yeah.
Just felt horrible. I had my dog with me, the one that I talked about previously who passed. I had him with me. We brought him all through the house. He did not want to go in that attic. I wanted to get a picture, and I had to there's like a ledge you have to step over and then get in the attic, and I had to put him over it. I'm like, just come here and take one picture, and he was, ugh.
Yeah.
Didn't love it.
Did Johnny tell you the story about how he hid in the closet?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh my gosh. He hid in the closet because he heard something going on downstairs and he thought it was intruders at first.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have heard that story. I don't know if he's told that on podcasts or shows or if he told us in person, but yeah, I have heard that.
Oh my gosh. He showed me where the door cracked and the whole 9 yards. And I was like, man, this is crazy shit. So where did your interest in this start?
I feel like I've always been a weirdo. I was just a little, like you said, bands and stuff. I was always a little nugget. I was into Metallica and Danzig and whatever, and then watched the X-Files, watched Unsolved Mysteries. I couldn't get enough of weirdness. And there was an age of televised court trials and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like every time you turned on your TV back then, there was a documentary about the Loch Ness Monster and anything like that I could soak up. I always did, had my mom buy me tarot cards. I was very into nature too. I was very into bugs and nature, and I don't know. A weird kid.
Do you think the internet ruined the mystery of some of those things?
Maybe, yeah, because you couldn't just research whatever you wanted.
Yeah, so it got passed through folklore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think about that a lot. Coming from the late 80s, whenever there was the satanic panic going on, man, that just kind of went away.
I think it's back again. I literally think we're in it again right now. So
that's neopolitics, though.
Yeah. I know. We're in a mess. Everything's a mess, but
do you know how hard it is as a podcaster that has big opinions about things but chooses not to express them for the sake of keeping the peace?
We do that to an extent. Every once in a while we'll get into some hairy stuff, but ultimately we do kind of want to be a pick-me-up for people. So if we get into stuff, we don't stay on it for very long.
I'm the same exact way. It's I would rather focus on the life experience that doesn't involve the things that people are getting smacked across the face with every single day.
Exactly. And the, even if it's an unedited podcast, it's still edited a little bit. So it's by the time this world thing happened and then your podcast gets out, it's people have heard about it 30,000 times. They don't want to hear about it from you too. So just talk about, oh my gosh, my dog is choking on his bone. He's fine. But yeah, no, that happened just recently with the stupid Will Smith thing.
I was just about to bring that up. Oh my God. Wow. This is awesome.
I said people have told me I'm psychic. So, but yeah, we had made a joke about it on Twitter, and then people were like, are you going to talk about it this week? And I was like, I don't want to fucking talk about it. And then we kind of made a joke of it when it happened. I would have talked about it if he was really into talking about it. But then after that, we didn't talk about it. We got a bunch of DMs saying thank you for being you guys and not falling into this bullshit. We didn't want to hear about it. And I'm like, I knew you didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah. It was, and as an MMA fan, we saw all of our favorite fighters had big opinions on it as well. So, and I agreed with 90% of them. And I made one little TikTok video about it. And I've almost deleted it multiple times, but it's getting traction. So it's one of those things when you're creating content and it's successful content, you kind of but I don't want to go for the cheap punch, Mm-hmm. So,
what I found interesting this week too is a lot of people had the opinion that he shouldn't have done that. And then that video came out this week of Mike Tyson fucking shoving that guy in the airplane. Everybody's like, good, that guy was so fucking annoying. I'm like, I guarantee all of you people said that Will Smith shouldn't have touched him. And now you're like, oh, go ahead, Mike Tyson. People change their opinions every second.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And that's why you stay away from, my golden rule is no politics, no religion, because it's unique to absolutely everybody. And you are an individual, so is everybody else. And that's what makes you unique. So I try not to discuss those things just for that reason. So I can find commonalities talking about ghosts and MMA. And other cool shit. So speaking of other cool shit, how did you get into tattooing?
Oh boy, let me think. I initially had wanted to get into regular tattooing, right? But I had a pretty bad experience with it. It was a boys' club. It still is kind of a boys' club. I had a pretty gross situation with a shop owner guy. Things went awry, and it put a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like, so I have to get through this bullshit to get into a shop, and it just wasn't worth it for me. I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I got away from it for a while. Like I said, I bartended and did whatever. And then I learned about cosmetic tattooing, and I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And it won't be, you know, the same clientele. It won't be like, hopefully the same like shop owners and whatever. And it was great. I worked in a great shop for a few years. Obviously it's so hard to get clients at first. Holy shit. That is something that nobody talks about. If you're a tattooer, nobody even knows you exist. And there's so many choices. It's like being a hairstylist. Like, you have to do your own work. You have to hype yourself up. So that's why, like, when I went viral, I'm like, well, thank the Lord. Now I have people come from like other states to get tattooed by me like all the time.
So is that a growing industry, the cosmetic tattooing then?
It is. And it's not only just like vanity. It's like people with alopecia,
Right.
people with cancer. I have people that have like scars that they want fixed. It's so rewarding and important, and like coming from the service industry, which is like the most thankless thing that's ever existed. People saying shitty stuff to you, people treating you like that's the only thing on earth that you do. And then to like having my clients like appreciate me, respect me, tip me, cry at the end of their appointments. I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I've been doing it for quite a while now, and I don't take it for granted for one day. Every time I go to work, I'm like, this is the best. I love all of my clients. I feel like really lucky, like every day.
That's awesome. So when you take all of these interests that you have and all of these things, like your dog, if anybody does follow you on social media, it's mostly pictures of your dog, which is awesome. The tattooing, the paranormal, the MMA, everything that you've been into, what gives you the motivation to keep going every day?
Good question. I just like, I love stuff. I love interests. I love stuff that lights my fire every day. I don't like to be bored. Like when you're on Twitter, when you're on Facebook and somebody puts, I'm bored. I'm like, I literally haven't been bored in 18 years. What the fuck is bored? Like, I don't even know what that means. I constantly have and not only all the shit that I do, I have like, I'm writing a book. I'm inventing shit. I'm designing shit. There's constantly projects in my phone where I'm like, okay, when I get 30 seconds, I guess I'll start that thing. Like, I never stop. And it's not about money. It's just about like, I don't know, creativity and like getting stuff out there. I can't explain it. And again, and I know it's a luxury, but when you work for somebody else, you don't work like that. You will never work as hard for somebody as you do for yourself. And as soon as it's all on you, you'll do like 30 things. And yes, you're stressed out, but it's like the best kind of stressed out.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what's something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
Oh boy, I don't know. I guess, let me think. I consider myself kind of a shut-in. Like, I will not leave the house for like 4 days. I have like kind of bad social anxiety, but then I come on here and I'm a motor mouth. So it's like, I don't get the disconnect really either. I am social, but I'm not. I don't know what kind of sense that makes.
I think it's a line from Clerks where it's like, I love gatherings, but I hate people.
Literally, yes. Like, invite me, but I'm not coming, probably. And then the same with events, like literally every card except that Nate Diaz picture card. I've went to every single card by myself. I've traveled there by myself. I've went to the fights by myself. Like, everything about me should say that, like, I don't want to do that. Why do I do that? But I have to. I don't know. It's so fun. And I do like meeting new people. I don't know. It's weird. I'm fucking weird.
No. I totally get that. It's Do you think it has anything to do with being creative and being more left-brained, though, too? Because I'm the same way. I could get on this podcast. I can be social. Back when I played in bands, I performed better in a crowd full of 500 to 1,000 people than I could a crowd of 5 or 10.
Yeah, that's awkward. I know. I don't know. And I think too, like, and maybe it's something about like us always being on a hustle or always having ideas or always creating, that like you do need that alone time and like quiet time. And then when somebody like asks you to hang out or like do the tiniest thing, it just seems like the thing that fucking puts you over the edge. I'm like, I already did this many things today. I can't do that too. I don't know.
So if you were to set forth some goals, what do you see yourself doing 1 year from today? And where do you see yourself going with your endeavors like your podcast?
Obviously, we just hope the podcast continues to grow. We have like a really engaged and lovely Patreon following. So obviously I want to keep all of them around. I hope I finish my freaking book by then that I keep chipping away at. I would love to do more events. Tenny is a lecturer and he's always done events. We've done, I want to say 3 like What's Up Weirdo branded ones now. Well, no, we've done more than 3. I don't remember. But I guess like more speaking, more, and it's weird too, because, and he tells me this, that we have to work on this, but he's used to giving lectures and he's speaking to the audience, right? On the podcast, we're talking to each other. So I just blah, blah, blah. But then, okay, so then when we go do our thing together on a stage, he's like, you have to interrupt me more. You have to talk to me. And I'm like, but it's not the same format. Like, you're talking to them, you're not talking to me. So why would I interrupt you? It's like, we have to, it's almost like on the stage, we just have to like sit in a chair and like look at each other and not look at the audience. Like, I will talk to you, but when you're talking to them, I'm not going to interrupt you. So we have to like work on the logistics of that. But I love doing it. And it's funny anyway, because we have that friendship and it's so genuine and it's so like, if we fuck up, if we make jokes, if we include the audience, if we don't include the, like, it all works. It's just our brand. It's just like being knuckleheads.
Yeah. I've talked to several friends as of late, and they say the most engaging content is when you put yourself into it. You know, you could go online and you can promote whatever your artistic endeavor is all day long. And until you put a piece of your personal life into it, people aren't going to engage with it. So it kind of goes exactly to what you're saying about the podcast, and what's probably working for you guys is that you are being your raw, natural selves. Like, they're not tuning in to listen to Tenny talk about the paranormal. They're tuning in to listen to you and him interact about his stories of the paranormal, if that makes sense.
It does. It really does. Yeah, I don't know. We just feel lucky. It's like when you set out to do something, you have an idea of something, and then people just get it. It's, oh my God, you always get it.
Yeah. It's totally rewarding. Speaking of rewarding, getting to meet you has been a great pleasure. Why don't you tell my listeners where they can find you and where they can find your podcast?
Okay, so our podcast is What's Up Weirdo. It's on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google, everywhere. We have an Instagram for the pod. It's at WUW. What's Up Weirdo? At WUW Pod. My personal Instagram is at Open My Eyes to Blue. That's so embarrassing. But somebody has my full name on Instagram, and I have to get it from them somehow.
Fight them for it.
I know. And then my work Instagram is at Magic Brows. It's MAGICK Magic Brows. And then my Twitter is at Jessica Knapik for all the fight talks. And I feel so bad because every Saturday I turn into such a bro, and there's all the ghost people like, let me just sift through all of her fight tweets that I have no idea what she's talking about. But they're really good about it. They don't unfollow me. They're just like, oh, that's nice.
Dude.
She's watching the program.
If you're ever up for it on fight nights on Saturday nights, feel free to shoot me a DM. I'll talk fights with you the whole time.
Yeah. You got to get on Twitter. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I've got to get better about using it. I'm awful about using Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, man, is Twitter going to exist a week from now?
I know. Okay, first, that was like a 2-part question. Firstly, You literally have to get on Twitter. MMA Twitter is such a big deal. Like the hashtag MMA Twitter will be like trending a lot of the time because we're all insane. Like that's how I make these connections with people and like get on shows because we're all friends with each other. We all talk to each other. So many fighters follow me. Like I can't talk shit about certain fighters on Twitter because they fucking follow me. So like if you're going to blast your show and you're going to have these fighters on your show, you literally have to like.
Yeah, I got to get better about it.
So there's one. There's your lesson for today. Number 2. No, I'm not happy about Elon Musk buying that. I don't know why we're in a position where like somebody can just like be a toddler and be like, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
So I'm going to offer the cognitive dissonance of Elon Musk buying Twitter. So this is both sides of the coin. There's the I'm rolling my eyes when I say it. There's the ability for more free speech. Okay, great. But let's keep in mind that Elon Musk had a neurotech company where he wanted to put chips inside all of our brains like 2 years ago, and he talked about this. So you want this being the purveyor of free speech, this guy that wanted to put microchips in our brains? I'm just saying. And I'm not an Elon Musk hater. I'm just saying you got to look at both sides of the coin here.
I'm going to agree with you. Quite frankly, I don't think Twitter's going to change that much. Obviously, he likes it. He likes how it runs. It's not just going to be different. He just wants someone to spout off all the time and invite his weird friends back on. Yeah. Whatever he wants to do.
But I wish he would close it down for a little while.
No.
Yeah, so, okay, this is great. This is total side rant. This is awesome stuff. Here's the thing. I am very pro social media, but I am very anti social media at the same time. This is funny coming from a guy that runs a podcast, right? But if there is any platform in the United States that could use some sort of government intervention to kind of like, I don't want to say moderate, but I almost feel like social media needs to be moderated a little bit more.
That is going to be a very unpopular opinion for you.
It probably will be. I hope I don't lose listeners over it, but it's one of those things like you look at the political divisiveness that has happened in particularly in the past 8 years, and it all circles back to social media.
Oh, it does.
It 100%. All circles back to social media. I just want to be able to go outside and high five my neighbor again, no matter what political sign they have in their yard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sucks.
But I will say, side note, that makes me feel like an underling of the supervillain a little bit. I have a lot of Dogecoin. A lot. So if I already made like $800 today. So that's his thing. If he pushes this and puts it behind Twitter and does all this stuff, like I might be a millionaire, and then I'll feel really bad that I hate him. I mean, I won't feel bad that I hate him, but it's definitely a conflict of interest.
See, you have the cognitive dissonance about this too. And you just spoke it into fruition here. You just like spoke it into existence. This is hilarious because I think we're basically saying the same exact fucking thing.
I know.
Because trust me, an hour from now, I'm going to be like, fuck that guy for buying Twitter. You know?
I know. I don't care who owns it. Quite frankly, I don't care who owns it just as long as it doesn't change that much because it really does put you in touch with people. It really is like an up to the second fucking news source. Like, I just hope it doesn't turn into a big fucking mess.
Right. Well, hey, thank you very much for being a part of my show. I'm glad we're friends now.
I know, me too. I would love to come back someday. So if you run out of guests again, like you said, I'll come back.
That's awesome. That's usually what I say. I'm like, come back and do the show sometime. You flat out offered it. World's a better place with you in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to once again thank my friend Jessica Knapik for doing the show today. You can find her on Instagram at Open My Eyes to Blue, at Magic, MAGICK Browse, and the weekly podcast, What's Up Weirdo, on Instagram, WUW Pod. You can also find her on Twitter at Jessica Knapik. And on that note, I promise I'm going to try and be better on Twitter. You can find me at www.caughtonthemic.com. Find all of my socials at Caught on the Mic. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Check me out. Give me a follow. I appreciate the support. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.